So this is my DIY e-bike using a Bafang mid-drive kit, and the following video is all my cock-ups along the way, but just a brief introduction of the things I wish I'd known before I'd started, in case you don't want to watch the whole thing, which I'd completely understand. One is the waterproof rating IP65 of these units is apparently a little optimistic. So for particularly the screen up here, I've got some extra waterproofing on top there. Not done a brilliant job, but it works fine. Just a piece of plastic over the screen and a bit of tape around it to protect it. And on the motor unit down here, I've put some tape, just some carpet tape, Gorilla tape along the seams, so there's hopefully less likely of water getting in. While we're down here, another thing I had to wait for an order on is these kits are designed for 68mm bottom brackets. They will work with a 73mm bottom bracket, but it doesn't come with what you require, and this is the issue here. I've bought this centerpiece here separately, which I'll just let it focus there. That's a 5mm wide aluminium spacer, which fits an M6 bolt through the center, because otherwise, because the bottom bracket piece that comes through here is only designed for 68mm, you have a 5mm gap here which you need to clamp this together, and you don't want that because that'll just bend something. That was like £2 off eBay for a pair of them. There's another joining piece round the side here with exactly the same issue, and there again is my spacer. I also bought some slightly longer M6 bolts than the ones that came with the kit for the same reason, so it would go all the way through there and into here. I think the ones are 12mm, M6 12mm that come with the kit. I bought some 15mm bolts. Again, just a couple of quid, not a big outlay, but slowed me down by a few days while I was waiting for that. This was all fairly straightforward. Battery case. This is a Hailong 3 battery case. Yeah, they're not a great design when it comes to mounting. Fine otherwise, but you can see the mounting points are up here on your typical frame that I'm familiar with. Your bottle cage mounting points are down here, so that doesn't work because there's no room. So this had to be taken to pieces, new holes drilled within the metal casing underneath here, and a whole load of cable ties around here. And it's fine now, it's very sturdy. And that wasn't a big or difficult job, but again, in advance, it'd be nice to know that. The final thing, I think, is regarding the brakes. I assumed I would not need a brake sensor on this, because, yeah, you just stop pedaling and the motor cuts out, doesn't it? Turns out there's a bit of a lag on that, probably a second or two. So on balance, I would have got the brake sensors, because otherwise the bike keeps going for a second or two after you might want to do an emergency stop. So I'm now going to buy the hydraulic brake sensors. This has got hydraulic brakes, which is, again, it's not expensive, but if I'd known in advance I'd have done that. With the kit you do get the brake levers for cable brakes, but that's no good on a machine like this. And yeah, that's everything I think I wish I'd known in advance. Oh, one last thing. I bought this bike specifically for this job, and it did have internal cable routing. It would have been good to have got a frame which didn't. Reason being, internal cable routing typically comes out down under the bottom bracket here, under a little lip, normally a U-shaped lip, and that gets in the way of the motor. So as you'll see in the coming video, I did a bit of butchery on the bottom of the bike. You can see where it's welded on here, this bottom lip through which the internal cable routing emerges, and I had to take an angle grinder to remove a fair bit of that so that the motor would come up underneath, otherwise it would have been hanging down a few centimetres further, which wouldn't have been very ideal. I mean, that's all again quite doable, not difficult, but if you're buying a bike framed specifically for converting to an e-bike, then I'd look for one without that internal cable routing if you're going for a mid-drive motor, because it will get in the way. And you're unlikely to be running all your cables internally, I suspect, when you're DIYing it like this anyway, so why bother? There, that's everything I think. The rest of the video will follow. Skip through all my mumbling if you wish. Good luck. This is the bike I'm going to convert to electric. It's a Norco XFR1. We're going for a mid-drive motor, so we're going to be replacing the cranks and chain rings here. The entire unit will go. I'll show you around the other side where you can see this is one of the external tight bottom brackets there. So that'll be all going. Derailleur there will be going, and here on the down tube we'll be attempting to mount a battery. Here's the kit I'll be using. This is a Bafang BBS01B motor. Chain wheel gets attached here. You got square taper for the cranks. This piece here replaces your entire bottom bracket, and you got square taper for cranks on the other side. And then other parts that come with it, you've got two brake levers there, which I can't use. I'm told these particular ones won't work with hydraulic brakes. I'm not worried personally about that. I will stop pedaling when I brake, I hope, so I won't cause problems there. Two crank arms, chain wheel cover and chain ring there. That's a 46 tooth, I think. This is the controller, a DPC18 I think, which is the latest colour model for what it's worth. That'll attach to the handlebars with a control unit as well to be attached. This is an optional extra here. This is a gear shift sensor. Although I'm not bothered about the brakes, I decided to add this. This isn't a standard part of the kit, I believe. It was a few extra quid. And the gear cable has to run through the centre of it, I think, through that hole you can just about make out there, and out the other side. And I believe there's a wheel inside which turns when the gear cable moves and cuts off power to the motor temporarily. Then down here we've got the main cable for connecting all sorts of bits and bobs together. This here is your speed sensor for the wheel, I think, and then these are various parts to connect the motor to the frame, and then a throttle here, which I am currently undecided whether I will use or not. There, and then over here the battery I'm going to use, which is a Hailong 3 case with some cells inside it. Pretty standard. That'll be attached to the down tube. This is the piece that gets attached to the down tube. First job is to remove the crank arms so I can get at the bottom bracket and remove that. For this I've got a tool like so, which fits in to this space here. Different bikes will have different means of removing the bottom bracket and the crank arms. This is fairly typical for Shimano external bottom bracket types. Others you'll require different tools to do this job. You'd have to check on your bike. So this just fits in here like so, and then should be fairly easy to turn. I can now unscrew this hex nut here, and there's a matching one on the other side there. There we go, and then we should be able to remove the crank. So once those nuts are removed, you should find this just, he says, pulls off pretty easily. There we go, leaving you with this and your crank, like so. Next we need to remove this bottom bracket shell on the left. So the left side has got a normal thread on it, which means that it unscrews counterclockwise and tightens clockwise. The right side is the opposite. That's an easy thing to forget and to spend hours trying to tighten it or loosen it in the wrong direction. So this side is fairly ordinary. We use a tool that looks like this. which you can pick up from most bike shops, for removing this particular type of bottom bracket. As I say, different types of bottom bracket require different tools, and you have to check depending on your bike. So this, in theory, fits neatly over here. These little teeth align with the notches you can see in there. So now that outer shell of the bottom bracket has been removed, you should find, using again trusty mallet, that you can gently just knock on there. If you haven't got a rubber mallet, then don't use a hammer. Put a piece of wood over here and hammer that, because you don't want to damage the end of this, just in case you want to reuse it. So some knocks on there, and it'll go in and out the other side. Come around. And there's the whole assembly coming through, which we can now remove. So just like on the other side, I've attached my bottom bracket tool here to this external bottom bracket. And then, remembering that this is loosening in the opposite direction, I'm going to give this a few taps on here with my mallet just to loosen it. This is what you're left with after you've removed the right side and the chain rings, and you can now see inside that bottom bracket, which is pretty mucky, often the case. So a good idea before something new goes in there is to clean up those threads and get that all nice, maybe a little bit of grease on it as well. So I'll be doing that. I've just been debating what to do with this. So obviously don't want this derailleur on the front because it's a single chain ring with the motor. So either I break the chain, which is probably the sensible thing to do to get it out from there, just in case I ever want to use this derailleur again in the future sometime, or I could just mash up the derailleur and cut through it so I don't have to break the chain. So I've decided I'll break the chain. I've got these chain links handy anyway, which are the right, they're 10 speed, it says 10S on there, so they're right for this bike, which has got 10 speed at the back. And that means I can save my front derailleur in case I ever decide to use that again at some point. So you'll also need a chain breaker tool like this, which I'll now use to break the chain. So the chain's now broken, you can see it just hanging down on the end there, which means I can now remove this front derailleur by removing this bolt here, and the whole contraption should then come off in one. I know that underneath I've got a cable guide here, where are we here, which is likely to get in the way of the motor underneath. So there's just this screw underneath here to remove, and that can go, and it's no longer required because that was only guiding the cable from this front derailleur, which we're about to remove anyway. So I've encountered a bit of a problem with this piece welded on here for the internal cable routing. It's getting in the way of the motor when it's passed through. I'll just put the motor in and show you. Around the other side now, with the motor passed through the bottom bracket there, that is as much clearance that's as high as it's going, because it's just catching on that part of the frame. Difficult to see with the light through the window there. I'll move around the other side and see if you can get a better view. Here we go. So yeah, that's as high up as he's going, which I'm not terribly chuffed with that for clearance. I can see that banging off a few curbs. So I reckon it can come up quite a lot further if I get rid of that bracket. That bit of extra welded piece for the internal routing. So I'm going to have a go at that with my angle grinder. We can see if I can do that without killing the frame. This is what I've done about the internal cable routing housing as it left the frame. This is the bike upside down, I should mention, just to get your bearings. And at the bottom bracket. So this was slightly domed here, which meant the motor, which is supposed to be, you know, up under here, was hanging pretty low, and I was worried it might hit on things. It probably managed to raise it 10-15 mil, I would guess, by doing that. We've used an angle grinder on here and here to take off a couple of lips, and then actually been able to use a hammer as well to then flatten that so it's not domed either anymore across there. And we shouldn't have lost any significant strength from the bike. I didn't want to remove the entire piece here because I think there may be playing some structural role, so that remains welded right down as far as it ever did to the bottom bracket. Yeah, well, we'll see. I'll let you know if it falls to bits, but I'm optimistic. Next step is to get the chainring on the motor, which is here, and that goes this way around down onto the motor so that yeah, it's facing inwards slightly. That goes like so, and you can see there are little holes there just to line up, and we have 5 of these to fit that with. And then if you wish, you can also fit the chainring guard over, and as you can see there's holes here which line up like so, and you screw in on the underside here with the little silver screws like this, which they've been very generous and appear to have given me 1 extra of, because I have 6 there. Here we are with the chain guard and chainring fixed to the motor, so that's the underside, so you're looking at the chainring here and the chain guard on there, and you can see the little silver screws that have attached the chain guard to the chain ring, and then the other side you can just of course see the chain guard. Lovely, so that now needs to go into the bike. There's the motor just popped in that side, and just push him through. So the fixing pieces go on here, on this ring. Just pull it through a bit, and they look like this down here. So we've got these 3 pieces. This one has got teeth on one side and holes on the other. That's the holes. Teeth are there, which you can just make out, and they will grip into the frame, so they will go on there like that with the teeth facing into the frame, and when that's tightened it'll grip. Now this is a 73mm bottom bracket in this bike. This unit, this motor, is designed for 68 to 73, but it doesn't come with anything to help you adapt for 73. So when I put this in position, if you look around here, you'll see there's actually a gap between this connecting bracket and the bolt hole it's supposed to go into. Same on the other side, of course, but I'll show you. Hopefully you can see there. Bracket, hole, and there is a gap, so that won't form a very secure connection there. So I've been on good old eBay and got some little aluminium anodized spacers like so, 5mm wide to make up the difference between 68 and 73mm. I've had to shave the bottom off them, which I just did with a lot of patience and a file. Took a little while, so that they will actually fit in there. They're 5mm wide, and so yeah, they will now go in here. Where are we? In here, between those two, to form a tight fit. Hopefully you get the idea. And I've also bought some slightly longer bolts, so I think it's 12mm the ones that come with. I've just got some, I think I've got some 15mm ones again off eBay, just to give that extra bit of length, so it grips it nicely. Let's put that back. So once they're in place, I'm going to put a bit of Loctite on there. I bought this simple cheap thread lock just to go round here. We don't want this coming undone. And then we have this ring which will go on there and need a few taps to get tight. It's got these notches in it. You can get a tool to do this, special tool, but I'm hoping a screwdriver bounced on there and a couple of wallops will give it a make it nice and tight. And then over the top of there, finally, you get this, which looks very similar to what we took off at the beginning, and actually I'm grateful to find actually does fit the older Shimano bottom bracket tool here, which I used to take the original off. So they go on in that order, and yeah, we'll pull obviously the motor right up underneath like so, and then that should be that in place. So this is the end result. We have here this bracket with slightly longer bolts I mentioned going through the little anodized spacer and into the main body of the motor here. Same second one just under here. This comes up and you can see it coming around here, which is now hopefully the teeth sticking into the frame a little, and then there's this outer ring here that there's that first ring that's underneath this inside there, and it does say in the instructions not suitable for anything wider than a 73mm bottom bracket, which aren't that common anyway, and that's because you just wouldn't have quite enough thread sticking out here to get these three pieces on, the bracket and then the two rings, so you wouldn't get a tight enough or secure enough finish, I assume. But that now seems hopefully happy and won't fall off. I'm going to install the battery on the down tube here, where you can see two bolts, and I've removed this bolt here. Now on the battery case here, the mounting points are way up at the top here, which if I place in line with those, you can see no way does that fit. Apparently it's not ideal to have the battery the wrong way up, because that would be the other option, the way around. You're then going to have all the weight at the top here, and I'm not sure, well, it's not designed to do that. So solution I've come up with is you can remove this metal plate, which I'll show you now. There were 3 screws, 1, 2 and 3 at the bottom here, just little screws that you can remove, and then this comes out, revealing the metal plate. I've removed the cable, which is here, that was inside, so that simply did fit in here, like so, and then that just comes out the bottom. So not very high tech, so you can just disassemble that, get that out of the way, and then I'm going to drill a new hole through here for one of the mounting points. Let's put that back in there. That solves one problem, so put that, about there, let's say, which is about the right position. It comes down to about there. And then my next problem is where the other bolt would be here is this piece of plastic here. And great, I thought I could therefore attach it through that, maybe slide this metal mounting plate down, because that does actually slide down into this area. But then I realised that this area is kept clear for a good reason. This area here is needing to be clear, so that when you place it like so over the battery, these connectors can fill this area, and then you're able to slide it up. So you can't put anything in the way there. So what we're going to do instead is, underneath, I'm lucky enough to have a cable fixing point you can just make out here. So cable tidy point, which is just, as you can see, a couple of inches further up than this bolt here. So I'll show you in due course, but I'm going to place this here and then use, if you go look underneath, that's there, come round, that's roughly in line with actually one of the official mounting points here. So we're going to come up with some cable tie solution to tie that into place there. So here's the battery holder with a new hole drilled in the bottom of it, you can see there. And I happen to have a piece of pond liner lying around, which I've just cut this strip out of to form a nice piece of rubber to go on the down tube here to prevent slippage. Give a bit of extra grip and prevent scratching of this frame, though it's already pretty scratched up. And so now I can take this and attach this to the frame and then build up the battery holder from there. So here it is now attached to the bike with a piece of pond liner, the metal casing over the battery holder, and I've put the wiring back in and it is bolted there. So the remainder of the battery case holder is here, and I've, as you can see in this lower opening here, I've prepped two cable ties to come in through the holes in the case there, out through there and out the other side. So I'm going to wrap them each around the frame and use this little cable holding bracket on the bottom of the frame here. So here it is, reattached. You can see the cable ties there, wrapped around there, around the sides, and then through underneath here. Now this is pretty good. Certainly you can grab it with your hand and give it a good rock, and it's moving the bike more than anything else. But the battery's heavy. It's at least 3 or 4 kilos, I think. And with that on there, especially with the extra height of the battery up to here, it does swing a bit. So I'm thinking I'm going to do another job with cable ties just around the frame here as well, to give it all the support I possibly can. And we'll just have to hope. So I'm just going to dismantle it again and do that. I've made a few more adjustments to the way that the battery is going to be mounted on the frame. So here, you may remember, this is the piece at the bottom of the battery mount. Down here you can see there's now space for a cable tie across the bottom here to go around the bottom of the frame. I've just drilled a couple of extra holes in the sides there. Still got the hole I drilled here for the nut to go into frame here. And then higher up, there's the remainder of the case. I've taken this metal piece out here, but just taken the 2 corners off the top there, so I can thread another couple of 1 or 2 cable ties through there around the frame, and then through those little holes where my finger is at the bottom there, around the frame in the middle, so it'll be secured in some fashion at 4 points along its length. This is the final arrangement of the battery holder, which now seems really sturdy. So working from the top, this metal plate here I took out, and I've just removed a corner here and a corner there, which means I can thread through the cable tie around here, which comes round and underneath and holds it there. Coming down, we've got this pair of cable ties which sneak in because there's just enough room for them to come under the edges here. Didn't have to do any adjustments there, and they again wrap round. We've then got under here, you may remember I drilled a hole in the back plate of this, which means that it can go straight into one of the bottle holder bolts. And at the bottom here, again, we've got another cable tie coming in through here. Again, 2 new holes drilled under there
and that 4-point system is pretty damn solid. So even now with a best part of 4 kilos of battery on there, it doesn't feel like it's about to shake off, which it did before with just a couple of points of contact. So now I'm in the process of fitting the gear cables again with the gear shift sensor. So up here we have the gear cable and lever, which is coming out here. Now that comes down to an end here, which I've just cut so that I can fit the gear shift sensor on there. That looks like this here on the floor. So each of these needs to fit over the cable at either end and then slots into the end of the gear shift sensor. And then the gear cable simply runs through it and out the other side. And I'm going to mount that up on the frame here. So originally the bike had the internal cable routing down here, but with all this gear down here now, I know it's not as tidy, but I'm just going to take the gear shift cable up across here, and it'll keep that gear sensor as well, the shift sensor, away from some of the crap and the mud down at the bottom up here, so that should last a bit longer hopefully. Here's the completed gear shift sensor. So now attached gear cable back to derailleur here, running up as I said rather than around the bottom as it went before, runs through this device, which is the gear shift sensor, there we go, and out the other side and on up to the handlebars up there, and yeah, the cable that comes out of it here will run down, and actually the attachment is down there. You can just see the end of it, which is currently got the black plug on it. So that attaches to that. Here I've now got the speed sensor installed, which is a pretty simple affair. It's actually got a little hole in the bracket there to take a cable tie either side. So this isn't a bodge I've done, it actually suggests cable ties, so it doesn't supply them. I put it on a non-chain side, so there's just a bit less clutter in the way. You fit a magnet to spokes, pretty straightforward. You want a maximum 5mm gap between the two, and this is adjustable in and out by a little screw here, so it's easy to get that right. And then yeah, cable out and round into the main mess down here. So this is the completed bike. So we've got the control screen on top here. That's been covered with an extra piece of plastic and a bit of carpet tape around that to hold it in place. I'm told its waterproof rating is not brilliant. Then we've got the control unit over here. Cabling comes round and runs underneath here along the crossbar and down, and I've strapped it all down the back there to come down and into the motor. Again, I'm being extra cautious, it may be unnecessary, but because this bike's going to be used in all weathers, along the seams of the motor unit I've put some tape to hopefully reduce the chances of any water getting in there. Yeah, and the battery mounted here. Coming around, the gear change sensor is just tucked up here, and that runs down to the derailleur at the back, and then yes, on this side is the speed sensor, which runs into the main cables there. There we go, finished. One last thing I'm going to do, having ridden it, I found that the lag is a good second or two on stopping pedalling before the motor cuts out, so I do want something on the brakes to sense that so that the motor cuts out more quickly. These are hydraulic brakes,
So the supplied brake levers that come with the Bafang motor don't work, but on eBay for a tenner or so you can get some sensors which I can connect up to the brakes so that the motor will cut out on braking, because I don't like the idea of a second or two of extra power if going through the wheel if something pulls out in front of me and I have to slam the brakes on. Here we are.